All right, so ancient Rome meets Hollywood, right? A Gladiator II, I mean, who saw that coming?
Yeah, it's a sequel nobody expected.
Nobody. But here we are.
Yeah.
And it's already making headlines.
Lots of buzz.
But this time, it's not just about the gladiators, the fighting and all that.
Right.
We're going to be focusing on Denzel Washington's character, this guy Macrinus.
Interesting character.
And get this, director Ridley Scott, he's comparing him to Donald Trump.
Wow, that's a bold comparison.
It is, right. So we've got a ton of sources for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Articles about Macrinus, like who he is, where he came
The
from.
backstory.
Exactly. And interviews with Denzel about playing the role.
So we get his take on it.
Yeah, and even some behind-the-scenes stuff, how they made the film.
Oh, cool.
So we're going to break it all down, try to figure out what Scott's trying to say with this whole Trump thing.
And whether any of this is, like, actually based on real Roman history.
Right. Because
Okay.
it all sounds a bit out there,
Well, the sources, they paint a pretty interesting picture of this Macrinus guy.
Okay, lay it on me.
So he starts as a prisoner of war, probably from North Africa, shipped off to Rome.
Oh, rough start.
Yeah, forced into becoming a gladiator.
Brutal.
But then, somehow, he gets his freedom.
Okay, so that's where things take a turn. He doesn't just, disappear. Right?
Nope, he builds this whole business empire,
Yeah.
starts supplying the Roman army, like everything.
Food, weapons, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly, and Scott even calls him a billionaire gangster.
Billionaire gangster. I mean, come on. That just screams modern-day tycoon.
It's definitely an attention-grabbing phrase.
It is, but, could someone in ancient Rome, back then, really become that rich and powerful?
Especially starting as a prisoner.
Yeah.
That makes you wonder how accurate it all is.
Yeah, was that kind of social climbing even possible back then?
To some extent, yeah. Rome's economy, it was more complex than people think.
Really?
Yeah, freedmen, former slaves who earned their freedom, they could become successful business owners.
Oh, interesting.
There are historical records, like freedmen running shipping businesses, trading all over the empire, making serious money.
So Macrinus going from, zero to hero, it's not completely far-fetched.
Not entirely, but the idea of him becoming a billionaire, like in today's terms,
Mm-hmm.
controlling these massive supply chains and having as much power as the emperor himself.
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch.
It is. Roman society, even though it had opportunities, it was still very hierarchical.
Right.
Reaching the very top with a background like Macrinus's would have been super difficult, probably impossible.
Okay, so maybe script's taking some creative liberties, for the film.
Which for a movie, it's understandable.
Yeah, but then there's this whole thing about Denzel describing Macrinus as someone who has used up his soul.
Right.
How do you even act that out, that kind of inner decay?
Well, Denzel Washington, he's known for really getting into his roles.
Oh, yeah, he's intense.
And from what we're seeing in the early reviews, he's bringing that weight to Macrinus, playing him like a man burdened by all the choices he's made.
All those compromises to get to the top.
Exactly. People are already saying he's going to get an Oscar for it.
Wow, Oscar buzz already? Makes you think, is this using up his soul thing? Literal?
Like a deal with the devil.
Yeah, or is it more of a metaphor for all the moral lines he's crossed?
It really plays into that comparison with Trump, right?
It does. People often accuse figures like him of putting personal gain above ethics.
It's a good point. It makes you think about the price of ambition.
Can you really reach the top without losing your moral compass along the way?
And in ancient Rome, religion and politics, they were very closely connected.
Right, the emperors were almost like gods.
So this in bed with the devil idea,
Mhm.
it could be, making dark pacts for power.
Or just figurative, showing how ruthless he's become. And that ambiguity, it's what makes him such a fascinating character, He's not just good or bad. He's driven by ambition, shaped by this brutal world.
Right.
But there's also that why not me attitude that anyone who's felt like an underdog can relate to.
Exactly. He's a survivor, someone who's faced death and come out on top.
That'll change you.
It can make you resilient, but also cynical.
You wonder if, for Macrinus, power isn't just about money or status.
Yeah, it's about control.
Control over a world that's been nothing but cruel to him.
Makes sense. And it makes you think about Ridley Scott as a director.
He's great at those historical epics.
But he also knows how to tell a good character study.
He gets the balance right.
And don't forget, the first cut of Gladiator II was 4 hours long.
4 hours.
Yeah, so maybe there was a lot more in there, exploring these moral dilemmas even deeper.
That got cut. Wow. Makes you wonder why, right? Just for time? Or were there entire stories they decided not to tell?
It's a glimpse behind the curtain, how directors make those tough choices when shaping a film, even a massive one like this.
Speaking of behind the scenes, did you hear about that same-sex kiss
Oh
controversy?
yeah, that scene with Denzel.
Yeah, it caused a media frenzy.
But it turned out to be nothing, really. They didn't even film it.
Really?
Yeah, just something they acted out during rehearsal. Denzel even said it was more of a peck and dismissed the whole thing.
Typical Hollywood hype, I guess.
Got to get people talking, especially when it's a sequel to a huge movie like Gladiator.
Exactly. But here's something I find interesting. Denzel's personal life, he stopped drinking at 60.
Yeah, he's talked about how it's changed his outlook.
Makes you wonder if that's influencing his acting?
He said this new chapter has given him a fresh perspective, a deeper appreciation for what he does.
Maybe he's bringing something different to this role, a level of maturity he didn't have before.
Could be.
It's like his life experiences, the good and the bad, are adding another dimension to his portrayal of Macrinus.
Interesting.
And it makes that comparison to Trump even more fascinating, right?
They're from completely different worlds.
Yet they both seem to have this relentless drive for power.
It's a powerful contrast, one that's sure to spark a lot of discussion.
Definitely. We've covered a lot, but we're just scratching the surface of this Gladiator II deep dive.
There's so much more to unpack.
The historical context, the moral dilemmas, and of course, Denzel Washington's performance.
Stay tuned. We're going even deeper into ancient Rome and seeing what lessons, if any, it holds for us today. Let's shift gears a bit, dive into the historical landscape of Gladiator II. We're talking about a society dealing with all this political instability, huge economic gaps between rich and poor, and maybe even this collective trauma from all those years of gladiatorial bloodshed.
It's like a powder keg just waiting to explode.
Exactly.
And that makes the whole why not me ambition of a guy like Macrinus, it makes it make more sense,
I see what you mean.
If you're living in a system that feels rigged, like the traditional ways to power are blocked off, then why not try to grab control any way you can?
Precisely. Macrinus, whether his story is totally accurate or not, he represents this universal truth about people.
Okay.
When we feel like we have nothing to lose, we're more likely to take risks, challenge the way things are, and maybe even, bend the rules a little.
Or a lot in his case.
Right.
So he's not just a straight-up villain.
I don't think so. More like a product of his environment.
Shaped by his experiences.
Exactly. And that's what makes him such an interesting character, You can understand his drive, even if you don't agree with how he goes about it.
He's ruthless, but you can still kind of relate to him.
Yeah, which is a real testament to Ridley Scott's skill as a director.
It is. But I'm curious about how Denzel Washington is going to portray that inner struggle, the one that comes with having so much power.
Right.
Macrinus has used up his soul, as Denzel put it. How do you even act out that kind of spiritual weight?
Well, Denzel's amazing at conveying inner turmoil. Remember his performance in Training Day?
Yeah.
He had to balance that outward authority with this, simmering darkness underneath.
That's a perfect comparison.
Right.
I can totally see how that experience could influence his approach to Macrinus.
Absolutely. And don't forget about that whole in bed with the devil idea.
Oh, yeah.
It adds another layer of complexity to his character.
It does, because it makes you question, did he willingly sacrifice his morals?
Or was he forced into making these impossible choices just to survive?
Which brings us back to the Trump comparison, right?
It does.
Are these figures driven by this belief that they're doing what's best, even if it means using, questionable tactics?
Or is it just pure ambition, a hunger for power that just consumes everything else?
It's the age-old question.
It is. Historians and philosophers have been wrestling with it for centuries.
Is power inherently corrupting? Or does it just, magnify the qualities that were already there?
Deep stuff.
It is. I find it interesting that Scott originally had Gladiator II running almost 4 hours long.
4 hours.
Yeah. Even for a history nerd like me, that's a long time to be sitting in a theater.
It makes you wonder what got cut out. Entire storylines. Maybe longer battle scenes.
Or even more scenes that explore those moral dilemmas we were just talking about.
It's like this historical mystery hidden inside a Hollywood blockbuster.
But it also shows the tough choices filmmakers have to make.
Balancing their vision with what's practical.
Yeah, it's not always easy.
No. Sometimes you have to cut things, even brilliant things, for the sake of the overall story.
It's like a Roman mosaic.
Oh, I like that.
Each piece is important, but it's the whole picture that really draws you in.
Well said.
And speaking of drawing you in, Denzel getting sober, it adds a whole other layer to his involvement in this project, don't you think?
Definitely. He said it's given him this new perspective, a greater appreciation for his work.
It wouldn't be surprising if that newfound clarity shows up in his performance as Macrinus.
I agree.
It's like he's bringing his whole life experience to the role, not just his acting skills.
Which makes him even more compelling as an artist.
It does, but we can't talk about Gladiator II without acknowledging the legacy of the original.
Right, it's a huge movie.
5 Oscars. Launched Russell Crowe's career. Those are some big sandals to fill.
They really are. And it begs the question, is Gladiator II trying to be just like the first one?
Or is it doing its own thing?
Tough balance.
Yeah.
You want to give the fans what they loved about the original, but you also don't want to just rehash the same old stuff.
It needs to feel fresh, exciting, relevant to a modern audience.
And that's where casting Denzel Washington was a smart move.
Yeah, he's not Russell Crowe.
And he's not trying to be. He's bringing his own energy and presence to the role.
Exactly.
And you've got Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal in there too, both rising stars, incredibly talented.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great cast. Shows how much confidence they have in this project.
I'm really excited to see how those veteran actors and the newer guys, how they all play off each other. It could appeal to both the diehard fans and a whole new generation of moviegoers.
It could. And while the spectacle of Gladiator to all those big scenes will definitely draw people in, I hope the film doesn't forget about the human story at the center of it all.
That's what made the first Gladiator so good. It wasn't just about battles and politics.
Right. It was about love, loss, redemption, that struggle to hold on to your humanity in a brutal world.
And those themes are timeless, just as relevant today as they were in ancient Rome.
Completely agree. Which brings us back to Macrinus, this man who, as Denzel said, has lost his soul.
Is there any hope for him?
Can he get his humanity back in the midst of all this Roman political backstabbing?
Those are the questions that have me hooked.
It all comes down to Denzel Washington's performance.
Can he make us care about a character who's done some pretty awful things?
Can he show us the cracks in Macrinus's armor?
Yeah.
That flicker of humanity that might still be there.
If anyone can, it's Denzel. He's a master at playing these flawed, complicated characters. I think he's going to surprise us all with how much depth he brings to Macrinus.
I think so, too. And that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating.
It's not just about a movie.
We're exploring human nature, the pull of power, the dangers of it, the possibility of redemption even in the darkest of times.
That's why I love history, It's full of these compelling figures who make you question everything you thought you knew about good and evil, success and failure.
Exactly. And Gladiator II, even though it's fictional, it gives us this glimpse into that world.
Where ambition and morality clash.
And the choices you make, they have huge consequences.
Speaking of huge, those battle scenes in the trailer, they look incredible.
Oh yeah, Ridley Scott's a visual master. I'm sure he's gone all out for this sequel.
I can't wait to see those Roman legions go head-to-head on the big screen.
It's going to be epic.
But for me, it's the quiet moments I'm really looking forward to.
Character interactions.
Yeah, Denzel's expressions, how he carries himself. Those are the details that will really bring Macrinus to life.
And let's not forget the rest of the cast.
Right.
Paul Mescal, he's a phenomenal young actor. And Pedro Pascal, he brings this intensity that's just perfect for a historical epic like this.
I can't wait to see how their characters interact with Macrinus and how they fit into the story overall.
It's shaping up to be a really captivating ensemble.
It is.
So as we head into the last part of our deep dive, I think it's good to reflect on everything we've talked about so far.
What do you think?
What are your first impressions of Macrinus? Do you see him as a villain, an anti-hero, something else entirely?
And what about that comparison to Trump? Is it a legitimate parallel, or is Scott just trying to get people talking?
Let us know what you think.
So we've talked about Macrinus, his ambition, all that historical stuff, Denzel Washington's life even. But can Gladiator II really live up to the original? I mean, that's a big question, right?
It's a huge challenge, yeah. The first Gladiator wasn't just a hit movie.
It was massive.
It was a phenomenon. Oscars, Russell Crowe became a superstar.
And those themes, honor, duty, revenge.
They really resonated with people.
They did. So how do you even follow that? Do you try to do the same thing again, hoping for the same magic?
Or do you go in a totally different direction and risk, alienating the fans who love the first one?
Tough call.
I think getting Denzel Washington, that was a stroke of genius.
He's such a powerful actor.
He brings that weight, that gravitas to every role.
And he's not trying to be Russell Crowe, which is important.
Yeah, he's creating something new with Macrinus.
And that's what makes this sequel so interesting.
It's not a copycat. It's exploring a different side of Roman society through this totally different character.
And from the trailers, it looks like Scott's not shying away from those bigger themes that made the original so powerful.
The politics, the moral compromises, the burden of leadership.
And remember Denzel's description of Macrinus, that used up his soul line.
Yeah, that suggests some serious inner conflict going on.
It makes you wonder, can someone like Macrinus, someone who might have done some really bad things to get power, can they ever really be redeemed?
That's a big question, and not just about this movie.
Right.
It's about being human. Can we ever truly escape our past? Or do those choices we make, do they stay with us forever?
That's what makes this sequel so relevant today. Even though it's set in ancient Rome, we're still asking those same questions.
We are. How much are we willing to compromise to get what we want? What does power really cost?
It's a timeless dilemma.
And it seems like Gladiator II is going to explore it head on.
And let's not forget the visuals. Scott's a master at that. The sets, costumes, those battle scenes in the trailer.
It's going to be epic, visually.
Those sweeping shots of ancient Rome, the armies clashing, the gladiators fighting.
I can't wait.
But honestly, I'm just as excited for the quieter moments, the character stuff.
The dialogue, the betrayals, those little moments that tell you who these people really are.
Exactly. And with this cast, those moments are going to be just as powerful as the big action scenes.
No doubt. Paul Mescal, he's fantastic. And Pedro Pascal, he brings this intensity perfect for a historical epic.
What a mix of talent.
It really shows how ambitious this project is.
It does. And I think it could appeal to a wide range of people, those who love the first Gladiator and those who are new to the whole thing.
I agree.
Well, I'm counting down the days until I can see it. It's got everything I love in a movie. Action, intrigue, complex characters, those thought-provoking themes.
Me too. It'll be fascinating to see how people react to it, the critics, the audiences.
So will it live up to all the hype?
Will it become a classic in its own right?
Only time will tell, but we'll be here to break it all down for you. Analyze the themes, the acting, how accurate it is historically.
We'll give you our take on whether Gladiator II truly stands on its own, or if it's always going to be compared to the first one.
So before you see Gladiator II, think about everything we've talked about. Don't just watch it, really engage with it.
Yeah, the story, the characters, the questions it raises.
Think about the choices these characters make, the compromises they face, that drive for power, how it can be good or bad.
And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. We want to hear what you think, your interpretations, your reactions to the film.
We love hearing what you all make of these deep dives.
So that wraps up our look at Gladiator II. We hope you've enjoyed this journey into ancient Rome, Hollywood, and those questions that connect us all, no matter the time or place.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and happy viewing.